now we're here, made it to the top, and our teams are trying to do the same. Let's actually dive straight into everything you need to know about our first match here in the NA region. It's going to be Na-I'd-Win versus Timeless Obsidian. I'm excited for this one, looking at the Na-I'd-Win roster first. I mean, this will be great for them, because if they win it out, they get a chance at a revenge match against M80, which beat them in the opening match 3-0. And I'm always there for a good revenge story.
Shout out Uber Eats, by the way. Yes, he does, baby. That's what I'll slip that $5 in your PayPal. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, you guys should probably know Garchomp has been like a, I'd say infamous in that sort of tier 2 scene. A really proficient player at tanks. So expect to see this team again try to sort of bounce back over a little bit of a rough start in this particular group. Again, M80 were looking strong. I mean, Timeless Obsidian went up against that main Timeless roster. Absolutely brutal stuff that was. Obviously, you see the return of Duff here at DPS. Obviously, one with an ill-fated showing through the Overwatch League, a chance to rewrite history for themselves and their team.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Dove didn't have the greatest stretch, I would say, within Owl, but no, potentially here, I think you would probably favor Obsidian here in this matchup. I think like slightly. AJMR, we've seen them before. I know whether it be Dive Party or Flash Ops.
Calling on heroes as
Dynasty,
well,
Dynasty and Collegiate. So, they do have some players we've seen in the past.
Here we go. A map Vudo. So Nepal, Ilios banned up here. We're gonna have not sure how that's really possible, considering Ilios is gonna be the map of choice. Don't worry about the graphic. All that matters.
They don't follow my rules from last week. It's
Lijiang Tower
his first map,
by the way, not Ilios.
Yeah, that's Mitch's fault.
How is it my fault? Literally, there's a picture of Ilios. It's a big picture of Ilios. It's large. I mean, I can see the map.
Debatable.
That would indicate to me that that's now. I can't believe you're doing it.
Zoe, bag me up here. It's debatable, right?
Nah.
Zoe, don't do it. Come on, parents get together.
Sorry.
Zoe, come on.
Sorry, Matt. No.
I'm always ganged up on.
Absolutely taken down. Yeah.
You're an easy target, even though you're so small.
Well, that's just more of an example.
You're an easy target for a limbo pole, at least, mate.
I mean, that is just. I mean, you're gonna have people think I'm just squished to the ground, and I just kind of waddle.
Some of us resist gravity. You don't. You're just a. You're just a pancake.
This is just not fair.
Oh my god!
Because I hear Sally laugh.
Sorry,
neither am I.
Sorry, just really.
I heard her laugh.
So done. Hey, she'd back me up, bro. I mean, you gotta learn who your friends are, bro. You can't come at me like that. I got backup for days. Let's jump in. Everybody, Lijiang Tower, our first map of this series. It'll be Control Center to kick us off, and it will be Malga's Mirror.
Oh, yeah. I was going to be like, whoa, I'm surprised. But no, Malga seems just really strong right now, right? The Cardiac Overdrive. Because it's a combination. You nerf the DPS passive down, where it obviously, it isn't reducing as much healing. Then Malga gets a slight buff. Cardiac Overdrive, is kind of like a, lifesteal type ability for everybody. You end up with these types of variations of comps. We've seen some teams run it with like the Sombra, like you see Na-I'd-Win, and then now you're seeing Obsidian. This is like very kind of tanky, right? May Reaper, like these are the kind of comps you would see typically like a Reinhardt back in the day.
Pretty timely disengage there by Garchomp, but eventually had to try and contest the point to some degree, and quite often these very tanky of fights, right, they get dragged out a long time. Na-I'd-Win realize they lose the point and they lose their tank, so try and disengage as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think Moira as well is a hero that finds herself in this meta where I think Moira is actually probably it's a cuss to take, but I think Moira is actually pretty good. Like, you actually got really good value out of the Coalescence. That's just, the May wall goes down, Malga stumps into it, can't really do anything there.
Though, because Glacial went in for an EMP, man. They hit an EMP, and there's no opportunity for Na-I'd-Win to follow up on that because of the May wall. Yeah, the Stomp gets shut down as well, but that Sombra ultimate, there was only a second or two duration of that hack remaining by the time Na-I'd-Win actually got through the door. One wall absolutely ruined them.
It's just a Widow swap here. Maybe see if you can get somebody now back over to the Reaper.
Hey, this isn't TXCXX. No one's playing Widow yet.
We'll see if Nidewin can actually break on through. They get a speed boost, put some pressure on the Mei, force ice block out already.
Garchomp, cage fight available here, but Jazz already gets taken down far too low. A Nidewin to be able to come and stand here. And now you've let Obsidian build a bank. We've got a Blizzard and a Death Blossom available here. Of course, a cage fight should it be required. We have ultimates to keep the enemy in place. We have ultimates to punish them for grouping up.
Yeah, I don't know if you also saw the patch notes, but Mei got a slight buff as well as a Nidewin. They're going to go with a Cassidy-Kiriko combination here, so... that's going to be the cage right. I was going to say, well, Jazza makes it over, but they get stuck inside the cage right. That is a Blizzard inside of the cage fight as well.
Yeah.
Once Obsidian's gotten the point, it's been, all theirs. But so Mei gets a ice block. You see it right here. You see how much health she can pretty much get back like up to full HP with just getting into the ice block. So huge survivability update for Mei. Obviously the lowering the reduction healing is a huge survivability buff for everybody across the board, right? And then combo that with what Maga brings, and that's why you kind of see these fights go on for what feels like, that time, right? Probably not the best example, but really, the fights should last like an eternity.
It's worth pointing out that, like, Mei's ice block, it's a 25% increase in that heal per second. So you, like you mentioned, you come out of there looking a heck of a lot better. In fact, many of the heroes that we're seeing, in these compositions have recently obviously received those balance changes, right? Your Symmetra, Reaper, also Sombra to some degree. So we'll delve into those a little bit when we have the opportunity to do so, but we're back underway here for Gardens.
Yeah, and it feels like with Nidewin, you have the Sojourn in the mix here for Jessa. It feels like these heroes, the hit scan types are just being like pushed out in a way, because like ultimately there's not a character on the other team. Maybe it's the Lucio that you can really burst down. It feels like everybody else really sturdy.
It's about having a critical massive damage though to put the enemy Mulga at least in a position where they can
really
back
nice
into the fight. That is brutal though.
That was a sick boot for a momentum.
And again, having your power slide forced right on the middle of the point there means you really have nowhere to go anyway. Last ditch effort there for Jazza and a Hail Mary to escape. It was not to be. Dynasty thinking about a bridge over troubled holographic waters, opts not to take it, uses that sideline to get some extra poked out.
Yes, Jessa set up on top of the Mei wall, and it was actually Momentum who went around the outside and it was able to get up on like that angle, which is really difficult, and land a nice Lucio boot, basically knock the Sojourn right back into their squad.
Again, how do you hold your opponents in place? Once more, Obsidian have much more of a wombo aspect to their composition here. Cardiac Overdrive in play here for Nidewin, and the Coalescence will add to that healing. But an Ant Matrix means that Obsidian really have control of the point right now. Sound Barrier for Mayhem might be worth holding on to now as their Death Blossom comes online. The Blizzard, though, that's still going to be a wrinkle in this plan. Glacier wants to try and surge forward here. Sound Barrier used, but it comes later from Obsidian, and Glacier gets no value off this Death Blossom. Oh, the Immortality Field from AJMR just saving momentum as it came out of that Sound Barrier. And look at that heal. Garchomp able to stave off Dove pretty comfortably here. Nidewin making this much of a closer affair, but Obsidian, of course, still control the point, and Dynasty will be cleaning up the end of the fight alongside Momentum.
The Mei seems incredibly difficult for them to take out and deal with. Like, that time we're seeing, tons of, focus on the Magas, on the Reapers, and Dynasty just walking around the point. They're able to come out with 3 there during that fight, and now the double cage match, so cage fight, so you do have the Immortality Field from AJ Mara potentially to save this.
Garchomp here waiting for an opportunity to get the maximum capture here. Ooh, absolutely flat in the front line, and that Mei wall cutting off line of sight for the healing there from Dynasty was huge, and the Mei seems to be the difference maker at every turn here, Matt. We talked about how durable she is, how her healing's been improved. We've seen multiple cases now where the wall has completely shut Nidewin down. What a one-sided map Lijiang Tower has been as Obsidian get out to an early lead.
Yeah, that was as dominant of a map as I think we've seen in a very long time. I think from just about anybody is Obsidian just kind of rolls on through them, where you have that survivability of the Mei. It just became really difficult. I think especially if you're going to run like a Sojourn on the other side or Sojourn Cassidy, like any of those, they just don't have the burst to be able to take out a Mei because she's so tanky, and then they also don't have like Symmetra can just kind of like ramp up like the damage over time, right? So she gets stronger as the fight goes on. I would say like, even Reaper, right, existing, putting down damage, shotguns, healing, right, gets a little bit stronger. You don't really have that capability, especially when they're running the Reaper and the Mei, and the Mei's getting so much value out of splitting the team off. I think you're always going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, we saw Cassidy at some points. We saw Sombra here for Glacial, which is all well and good, and obviously the EMP is incredibly powerful against a team that is going to be grouped up. But the one opportunity they had to make use of it, they got walled off. They hit the EMP onto a number of players, but the rest of Nightwind cannot get through the choke. And that's where it really goes from bad to worse at that point. Here's, obviously, this is that wall. This wasn't for the EMP, but this is the same play loop the Dynasty was engaging in basically every single time they came knocking. Once you get forced off the point with this kind of setup against a Mei, it's almost impossible to get back in.
Yeah, maybe they weren't on the same page there because it looked like, maybe Jezza was trying to force out that wall and then, or Glacial was able to force out the wall and then the other player actually got stuck on the opposite side of it. But you see even here, Dynasty able to get, players split off with that wall. They also have the Baptiste, right? So there's no like immortality field on the other side or something to keep those players on the opposite side of the wall alive. I mean, right there you can see, Garchomp, nothing you can do there as... Really, it was just all domination. I expect you to consistently see these comps. Like, I don't think they're going to change. Like, typically in the past, we've seen, like, comps be map dependent. I don't think that's going to be the case here at all. I think you're going to see these comps kind of continue. I would say King's Row, even in the street phase, the Mei could be really powerful.
Yeah, still very good. I like the Baptiste adaptation here. Because again, if you have an immortality field in play and let's say Cardiac Overdrive is active, for example, you don't have to worry too much about healing your teammates. They cannot die. And again, Regenerative Burst is very powerful when everyone is just playing in such close proximity. And looking at the comp, you wouldn't think much of the impact of Amp Matrix. You get Amalgam behind that. Even Mei is absolutely disgusting with some of those Endothermic Blaster alternate fires through it. Huge difference maker there, and if your opponents are playing a comp that doesn't really isolate you very effectively, can't maybe run up on you as easy because you have such a durable front line, seems like that overall output and consistency from Baptiste fits in with the idea of this persistent healing composition. You're not worrying about your healing resources. If you're Moira, for example, you have burst healing, unlike Lucio. Kind of gives you a little bit of the best of all of those worlds here. So I really like the read that Obsidian have on how to play around this Malga as effectively as possible.
Yeah, and I think the ball is kind of in Nightwind's court, right? Like, okay, we got, absolutely destroyed map number 1. What can we do here comp-wise or change things up for map number 2 to make it a little bit closer? So, looks like Nightwind will be on defense first here, kick things off, and it looks like they're actually going to bring a Mei Reaper in of their own.
Again, they'll be approaching, of course, from the low ground, but expect to see these comps, right? Just group, try and shove onto the high ground, drop a player down to the point, start the cap, and force something from their opponents. What do you think about the Doom into this, right? It's not the first time today we've seen potentially this kind of adaptation.
Yeah, so what? We saw it from, I believe it was, in the Peps Nuage series, we saw some of the Doomfist come into play. I still think we just don't know enough yet. Like, it seems like I think how you kind of put it in the pregame, it was probably the first time I ever heard you do
it's
some
the first time you actually listened to me say something, so that's
some deep analysis, and I was like, that's actually a pretty good point.
That are pretty good, but you just don't always hear them. That's cool though.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make 65 Reddit accounts, but I mean, but I think that teams default to typically whatever the safest, sturdiest option is in Overwatch,
yes.
which typically. Results, it can have like pretty consistent results, but it may not be the overall kind of like best case scenario. Yes. We don't see the Doom come out here, but I also think because of the nature of how things are, there's not really like an incentive to experiment, right? As Obsidian, they'll take this first point rather easily, but there's not really an incentive for a team to say, okay, let's try and get really good at Doom against this, right? Because you can just play this, right? And just take this mirror.
There's not enough time, right? You probably need more time to work on some potential counter comps. Because you're right, safest isn't always best, right? If you have a good answer to this, then abuse it.
Yeah, I think it's just with the way like a meta kind of develops, right? It develops late. And then, you're not going to be able to figure out a counter right away. Here's a lot of ultimates thrown in. Double Coalescence, Dove. with a Death Blossom as they will get another fight win. But also, I mean, like kind of how Naga said, it feels like goats. This is kind of typical of what we've seen from like these types of metas in the past, where you frequently see a ton of blowouts, right? Because one team understands the ult cycling and, you know, how to kind of combo them way, maybe not way better, right? But they're kind of like in a better flow of it than the other. And you see these fights just go completely one side.
There's also a snowball impact to getting off to a good start and being the first to really start to bank some of those ultimates. And sometimes teams that are behind will take a risk, right? And have like a slightly lopsided, you know, ult usage, try and cheat more value than they would normally get out of one or two ultimates, and that can also put you further behind if it doesn't work. Here's the cage fight. Garchomp, though, completely unperturbed, standing, protecting much of his team from the rest of those shots, but eventually he will be brought down. Death Blossom getting thrown in here. Jazza trying to make it work, but that was dirty from Dynasty. Love the translocate to high ground and hack on the Reaper midway through the ultimate, but there's more fight to be had. The remainders of Obsidian will clean up now. I'd win, and here is that snowball playing out in front of us.
Yeah, and Glacial ends up using the Blizzard there. I believe it's taken offline by Dynasty using the EMP. So over 5 minutes in the time bank, man. That is a lot of time. As AJ, they're gonna have double support ult here. Probably gonna end up with a Death Blossom by the time this next one kicks off. And like you mentioned, yeah, you just start stacking these ultimates. There's nothing to do.
Genji from Dynasty, no one can really challenge that high ground except for the Sojourn, I suppose. Lucio. Soundberry comes out here, it's just a little bit too late to keep Garchomp standing, and this goes now from bad to worse. A later sound barrier for Obsidian as they start to surge forward, and Mayhem could not escape the dash. Dynasty gets his resets here, dominating from that high ground. Mobility now reigns supreme on this part of the map.
Coalescence available here for Nide Win from Paradox, but that is that is your last attempt here at making any type of stand. Look at this. Tread and Co push right up to the door. It's going to be a Death Blossom. The Moira able to keep him alive. I think Cardiac Overdrive as well.
Yeah, turns out they've got the healing. Nide Win to withstand that combo. Cardiac Overdrive absolutely crucial there. Is while it was impossible to bring Dove down midway through that ultimate, it was impossible for Dove to do enough damage to pick anybody off. That's what burst damage looks like in this economy.
Dove living through basically that entire fight is kind of crazy. Just gives you an idea of the Reaper lifesteal plus the Cardiac Overdrive, and then also just the healing output of the Moira. So even though you lose that cage fight here, plus Blade plus Coalescence could be enough to get that payload over the line, and you know, anything above 3 minutes is an eternity.
Blade does offer some nice burst damage in between the swings. The healing that's the problem for Genji. So, I mean, Dynasty really has to hope they're able to pull that Blade at a time where Moira's maybe not attending to one of those targets all that closely. Jazz is low, blood in the water, and Dynasty wants a bit of it here. Chasing after Mayhem the Lucio, one more slash will get the job done, and eventually both backliners get brought down. Genji, the hero normally not favored in a heavy healing meta, is able to find some impact here because of the damage of each of those swings respectively. Dove, though, more than happy to T-pose up on Jazza, who will be brought down by Tread. And now it's going to be desperate attempts here for Nide Win to turn this into anything but an utter catastrophe. 3 minutes and 5 on the clock here. Garchomp turning up to the point. Cage fight also going to be utilized here. But everyone from Obsidian gladly steps in. Garchomp still able to find Dove. That is egregious in and of itself. Malga gets away with that. But still, almost 3 minutes of time bank for Obsidian to play.
And like you mentioned, once you start to lose some of these fights and you start to get behind in terms of ult charge and, you know, all of that, it's almost even like compounded to be worse once you start changing characters, you know, heroes after that. You just kind of get these types of results. I mean, if you think back to GOATs, right? How many, like, you know, crazy, I feel like that season we saw like every record broken in terms of like map completion fast, and then also like hero damage, like all different types of stuff.
Especially Zarya damage, right?
Yeah, all the stats like basically went out the window. You know, Zarya's doing like 50,000 damage a game type of thing. Where obviously not seeing that now, but I think you're going to see some of these results where Obsidian on defense. I'll see if they decide to keep the Sombra in the mix. I think the Sombra gives them a little bit more backline pressure. Also, you know, EMP pretty valuable here. As now I'd win looking at some different things potentially here on offense.
I don't hate the Cassidy choice here. Obviously that hindrance is extremely scary for Sombra or even Reaper to deal with. You have a small window to capitalize on that, especially if they're trying to flank solo. Obsidian saw the Maycom from Nightwin and were able to play around it pretty comfortably. They're Sombra, very hard to just stop with a wall. King's Row is not that linear of a map, right? With a lot of high ground and opportunities to drop into the back of these comps. What do you make of the Sigma here?
Okay, I actually would have, I would have liked to see them play it with Sim potentially, or see some Symmetra. I caught some, I know games from Apex, so some Symmetra there, where I think the Symmetra with that ramping damage could be an issue for the Mauga. And Sigma, look, just has great survivability, like, on his own. That's going to be a Glacial that takes out Tread right away.
No, I'm pretty happy with the setup here. Garchomp doing a pretty good job of keeping Jazza alive and well protected here. The dive, though, for AJMR. Okay, doesn't quite pay off. That is a little scary. Still 3 players, though, for Nightwin to head over towards the point with. Dynasty got brought down there. From the high ground, we have a Wild Dove behind. Oh, yeah, he's up in front of him here, so an opportunity to intervene still as we have our second tick come up. Obsidian have had a chance to get a read on this comp, Matt. Now they're going to figure it out the hard way.
Yes, they do make some changes. Tread will come back on the Ramatra here, and they'll actually get a touch. For a second, I thought maybe a little bit too slow there from Dove, but block here. Just trying to get some control on the points as it forces Nightwin back a little bit.
Dynasty with a great off angle here too. Dove controls the high ground. The setup is good. Tread punished there by the looks of things by an accretion. The follow-up damage was good. It's going to be a sound barrier here for Nightwin. They've lost their Baptiste, but they still want to go for it. Garchomp looking electric in the front line here. Glacial, I saw that virus connection. Well placed as Jazz's Deadeye will finish the fight. Sometimes just that one accretion is enough.
Yeah, it's, no, they have to end up using a decent amount of ultimates to end up holding on to the point there. You know, they use the EMP, use sound barrier, right? But still, you put yourself in a position now to unlock the payload, get it moving here towards the second part of the map, and if you force them off of Mauga, you feel like that is a huge win for you, right? And that Mauga mirror, it has not looked good so far. So, Gravitic Flux plus an Amp Matrix here. Both ultimates pretty good in this part of the map.
Obsidian with a bit to work with themselves here. Dynasty was hoping to set up, but Jazza just flattened stuff there. Not the way you want to start this fight, and yet Obsidian still want to commit to some degree, believing in the EMP and the follow-up, but Jazza shuts the Sombra down as well. Hitscan finding a little bit of leverage here, I suppose, as Annihilation gets thrown in now, as Obsidian really want to slow this down, and that ultimate is still absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, I think you feel like if you're Obsidian, right? Yeah, you have this huge time bank, almost 3 minutes. Like, you can kind of afford to throw some ultimates into some of these fights to win, because Nightwin, just in terms of clock, is going to be forced to here shortly. You know, you can't take too many losing fights, as they'll actually have Paradox switch over from the Baptiste and play the Kariko now.
From the high ground, Nightwin have to play from for now. It's really not a matter of finding picks from this vantage, but finding an opportunity to drop down safely and get a read on who's set up below them. A bit awkward for this Sigma to have to play that close to Ramatra, but that is how Tread has engineered this setup. Jazza's brought down already. The Cassidy is gone. You can't be going on with this. Dynasty, though, loses out in the 1 versus 1, but the rest of Obsidian shoving back into the choke. Flux here. Sound barrier will be there for momentum, though. I guess Pop's EMP will follow it straight away as Mayhem has a sound barrier of their own. Dove gets flattened here. Tread not faring too well on the front line either. Nemesis form will keep them going for a little bit longer, but momentum can't find anything in the meantime, and Nightwin, sheer force, sheer weight of ultimates, get them through this choke.
Yeah, right after that EMP comes down, right now Nightwin, they end up having their sound barrier drop right after. You're able to kind of, you know, live, just survive just off of the, you know, the larger sound barrier and the longer one, where Dynasty now will switch back over to May. So not exactly the Mauga comp, right? You're just kind of swapping out the Mauga for the Ramatra, where maybe you feel like he's just a little bit better here against Sigma.
Is that Deadeye? Jazza, look at the space creation for Jazza here. This is insane. Fantastic stuff for Garchomp, and that yields that kill on Dove. Will it be enough? Jazza eventually going to be brought down, but with his tread being as low as they are, very, very hard for Obsidian to regroup here, let alone actually contest the point. 0.07 meters away, and here they come once more. Annihilation is in play. That could be a key factor. AJMR, they need to stay alive in order to get the coalescence off, but momentum can't hang. And there it is. The hack will prevent Tread from getting that big ultimate off, and Obsidian have to concede this second checkpoint too.
Yeah, and since Nide has gotten them as HMR, I believe in the BA using the Colosseo right now, but since they've gotten them off of this Maga comp, I mean they have looked fine. And look at this, I mean EMP plus Gravitic Flux, you're in a spot where you're obviously not going to beat their time bank on the other side, but still being in the same ballpark is a massive win for Nidewin.
Is that Annihilation? Tread not caught in the Gravitic Flux and is able to push into most of Nidewin. But the EMP after the fact is pretty scary. Glacial still has to respect the damage of that Annihilation though, but eventually enough damage has been done. They're happy to serve themselves up if it means bringing that Ramatra to heal. We have 2 minutes and 40 on the clock. Yeah, we're going to be running this back one more time by the looks of things. And I wonder if we get this same setup. Tread still not switching off the Ramatra, still believes even without Annihilation. And that's the answer.
The virus from Glacial onto Momentum right after the EMP. I mean, basically just insta-kills that Lucio is.
What Dynasty? What? They were absolutely flattening Jazza with some of that damage, but that headshot cleanup is beautiful. And what a high-value elimination to get to. Don't even get to get through your Ice Block. That's brutal. The whole point of this comp is that it's supposed to be hard to shift, high HP, high healing. So getting insta picks like that is massive. It's not quite enough though. It needs to be a little bit more of a clean fight win for Nide to finish this map.
The way Dynasty was moving, he almost kind of like was moving like thought it was like his Sigma shield, just kind of like running right at Jazza and the headshots from the Cassidy. So now Duffel actually playing Ashe. So this composition from Nide doesn't exactly have to play like super clumped up together, so maybe not like crazy value out of the Dynamite, but just kind of controlling that high ground. That time Dynamite connects with 2. EMP early here, and it's going to be answered with Obsidian Soundbar.
I like it that we see a Grav come in there. Gravitic Flux from Garchomp, but maybe a little bit too early. Later on, there wouldn't have been a Sound Barrier to protect Obsidian, and so we have a trade at the start of the fight. Dynasty again, dominated by Jazza. This time it's a Deadeye elimination. But the Kiriko is gone for Nidewin, and that could be scary now in the face of the Coalescence as they surge forward. Vortex to slow the stragglers now. Garchomp, seen better days, safe to say, as AJMR hoses him down.
This is like, I think why, when you kind of talk about Moira, right? It's like very much like Moira, I guess, versus like Baptiste, or like really, I think primarily like Kiriko, kind of like, have that same type of, slot. The Coalescence, it almost feels like every time you're going to get some element of value from it, right? Where if you use Rush, you can get like pushed out of it, or window can get blocked. Just look at this. I mean, Tread gets right up in there. Dynasty's going to get the kill on a Mayhem. So just that, the Ramatra ult just pushes them so far back towards the spawn. I mean, this is going to put them down to what? Like, they're just going to basically have like a last-ditch effort to touch the point.
I think Tread has a lot less to fear now without a Sombra in Nidewin's composition. The Bastion rather, that's a little bit easier to deal with here. Glacier wants a bit around the corner here. Tread more than happy to waste a bunch of time. We're down to 14 seconds and that cart is sliding backwards. That's for those keeping track at home, the wrong direction. Garchomp on the Doomfist here needs to at least contest this, but they have to look on as the rest of their team are cut into pieces. Blizzard there, thrown out by Glacier defensively, finds no value in terms of advancing the game plan here for Nidewin. And eventually they get brought to a screeching halt. The Doomfist switch was a last-ditch attempt, and the Ashe switch from Jazza is a little too late. Obsidian lock up a second map in a row.
Yeah, but you saw some signs of life there from Nidewin, right? Like, when they were actually able to get Obsidian off of those, like, Maga-based compositions, it looked like a much evener game, even matchup. It's just, I feel like they were just so far behind in terms of time ping, right? I mean, you can't give up, almost 3 minutes on the other side and then expect to just kind of, like, walk down the map, match it, and then kind of run it back in OT. I think they just got off to a really terrible start.
And when you're an attacking team, when you pick the Sigma, you are going to force the defenders to be aggressive. Right? You're going to force them to come forward and close the gap, because otherwise you keep them at arm's length for the entire game, and you get way more value than even a Ramatra, who is okay at poke to some degree, will get. That seemed to be a bit of an issue for Timeless initially. But once they're able to stabilize a little bit, I really do think the Sombra being out of the picture makes life much easier for that Ramatra. You're not going to have your ultimate shutdown. Not going to have, you are going to have that available to be used here. Then they could start to dictate the pace a bit more as defenders. Again, I mean, look, the Magas, they'd be Malgarin. I don't know if there's really much more to add to that at the moment. We've sort of discussed it a heck of a lot here. I am interested though as to why we moved off that in the first place.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about the Sombra, because Think about Ramatra's kit, right? If he's, power blocking or has the shield up, thinks he's alive, gets hacked, it all goes away. Like, the burst damage just comes in, right? You just kind of, like, run him down. Then he becomes a very easy target. So here, this is part of Obsidian's offense. I mean, this is just nasty.
Yeah, I mean, because your positioning as Sigma is contingent on your cooldowns. Oh, Ramatra, excuse me. It's contingent on having power block. It's contingent on having your shield. When you don't have your shield, you play further back. So you get exposed, when you get hacked by that Sombra and you don't have the availability of those abilities, at least for that short window here. And the Sigma can just hit you with an accretion. And then even if the hack is expired, you don't have a chance to find your feet again. We saw that happen a couple times. Here's a good example. I do like how the Sigma can effectively create that space for the Cassidy, and Jazza did an excellent job, I think, of finding some really crucial targets. But eventually, when your front line is getting pressured to that degree, when the defenders are playing forward, you don't have that space anymore as Cassidy. And then you're dealing with the Asher. Look at this. This is what Jazza has to do to try and keep Dove quiet there. And it's just, I mean, you're not favored in that matchup. You don't have an edge there.
Yeah. And I mean, you lose, you had about 3 minutes there trying to complete the map going towards the end. You had about 5 fights, but going into the high ground, right? Even if you expend a ton of ultimates to try and get it around that corner, keep things going, like the defender spawn advantage is so good there. Natural high ground. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for anybody to push on through.
I also think the Genji pick that we saw from Obsidian was interesting, right? Obviously, you wouldn't normally expect to see it. It seemed unintuitive against these really high healing, high tanky comps back when we were looking at the Amalgam mirrors. But there was multiple opportunities there, I think, where there's like a low health target that isn't really being attended to. It's an easy dash in / melee shuriken, get out, and then sort of repeat. And Dragonblade obviously is stifled a little bit, especially by sound barrier. Yeah. But the healing is consistent, but not always bursty enough to cover over that. It might take 3 slashes to kill a target, but in Amalgam Mirror, getting a 1 kill, that's good enough to win the fight.
But if Dragonblade, let's say they end up having to use sound barrier on something else, right? Like Dragonblade is phenomenal, or even just forcing out the sound barrier, right? Like, okay, we're forcing them. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, they know that they have Dragonblade on the other side, and that just prevents them from using sound barrier for X period of time.
Which is very good, because there's about 50 other scenarios in which you want to beat, right? Especially if Malgarolds, or even, even if you're just struggling in the neutral fight.
But you can't, but you feel like you can't because they have, they have Blade on the other side, right? So you're kind of stuck taking these fights over and over again. And let's say you start losing some of them, right? It's like, okay, like, what do we do? Do we invest the beat? If we invest beat, then like they just disengage, or we lose, or they have a beat of their own to match, then they come back with Dragonblade and just win that fight, right? So it puts a lot of pressure in terms of like, kind of calling, figuring out who's got what ult, and then also how to kind of use them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a concept that we haven't really used much since GOATS back in 2019-ish is the neutral, right? Obviously, that is the part of the fight in which teams haven't used ultimates yet. They're trying to find incremental advantages and snowball them into player advantages, into numbers advantages. And we've seen that actually be won out pretty comfortable, especially in the first map of this series by Obsidian, right? The neutral, the way they cycle their abilities, not their ultimates, is now to give them an advantage. We're going to be expanding about that once more. Dominated in the neutral was obviously a favored term of Super back when he was leading the charge for the San Francisco Shock, and he was someone that was quite good in that sort of GOAT setup as well when he had the opportunity to play. So Bumper as well, famed for his neutral gameplay. So let's keep an eye on that now as the rest of the series plays out before us. We'll have Colosseo next.
I'd love to know how this first fight's going to play out. With like how teams typically have just kind of like poked at range constantly here, with maybe some more Reaper in the mix. Like, I'm curious how this is going to play out.
I still think if we have Malga comps, I think the hit scan is a trap still. I know that there's the temptation because this map features some high ground vantage and a fairly long sight line in the middle part of the map. But Reaper Sombra, Reaper May, especially for like what is a small corridor where like the bot is in sort of uncontested territory, seems very powerful still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or maybe we see teams move away from the Malga. Like, is there some type of other types of combination you can play here?
Sorry, Winston. I'm here for this.
Winston Overwatch. Hey, look. Winston could be, if they're going to be playing Sigma on the other side, right? Winston, if you wanted to get aggressive, could be pretty decent, but it'll actually be just a difference here of Ashe versus Sojourn. So Sojourn obviously going for the more, put down damage, burst, get a kill. where Ash can just kind of like tick the damage down over time on the opponent.
I like this in that these teams don't want to brawl so much as they actually want to invest in their hitscan players and allow them to have as great an impact as possible. A lot is sort of dependent here on the Sombra. Remember, like a hacked Sigma is absolutely useless, but this really puts the spotlight on Jazza and Dove respectively.
You're kind of forced to invest in your hit scan here.
Which a win condition.
Man, Dove comes under a lot of pressure as AJMR gets low as well. That's going to be Immortality Field, and I think Glacial just stayed a little bit too long. Maybe got a little bit too kill hungry there. They had to look like they were going to be in a great position to finish some players off.
A really good presence of mind there for Garchomp to jump into that Immortality Field after being hacked, but Jazzy gets brought down by the virus. Garchomp, again, does not want to be getting hacked here, and somehow Obsidian, they get off to a good start. The mid-fight gets a little bit hairy, though, where they're in position now to clean things up and head back their way.
Yeah, it's 9 Win got off to a really good start, right? I know it was an early Immortality Field out from Obsidian. Look at this.
Back with the vengeance.
The high ground there, yeah. It's, Glacial will get the kill. And I think 9 Win thought that they maybe had a huge advantage, right? They decided to stay in a little bit longer, potentially, and it ends up getting caught as this will be just a 2-meter lead here for Nidewin. So not a huge amount at the moment. As really, we're just going to see a lot of these fights, I think, in the neutral. This is going to be difficult because they're pushing into this high ground. This is where the Ash can dominate.
Dynasty taking the front door here. Watch out for that. Sigma wants to force the EMP. That is extremely risky, man. Just right in front of a Sigma. Not a care in the world. AJMI able to capitalize, though, and brings Garchomp down. So I think you take that trade, right? Enemy main tank for your Sombra any day of the week.
You know, like, it almost looked like, you know, in some games, if you like DC, you just start walking forward. Yeah. Like, it looked like a zombie walked forward on this Sombra right into the face.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's funny. Like a Sombra clone, like they're making it. Like, yeah,
like it's a dupe. Yeah, look really odd, but no, look, you're just trying to get that EMP on that one character, force him back. Garchomp gets really low. That's some damage with the Bob. Is this going to be an EMP here? Virus does not connect, but Dynasty was so low, you're able to finish him off.
You just don't have the capacity to limit the effect of the gravitic flux when you're EMP'd, right? Lucio has sound barrier. Momentum has no opportunity to use that to stave that ultimate away.
So you do have a lead now here for Obsidian. Cannot Win get through this area of the map, right? Really awesome high ground control here for Obsidian, obviously coming out of their spawn. It'll be very difficult to push into this. This is where I think the Ash can definitely thrive.
Jazz is trying to start that process, right? Get a staging ground on that high ground yourself, get a kill, and go from there, but it doesn't pay off. You've lost a Kiriko already. You use a sound barrier to try and stay in the fight, and there's an aspect of maybe it would have been better just to have let this one go. Garchomp able to find Dynasty at the very least there, but the accretion comes clattering in soon after. Spend a sound barrier, still lose the fight. Can't be happy with that result.
Yeah, they do get the lead, but I imagine this lead is going to flip rather quickly here as Paradox, the high ground, is alive. Just trying to battle Dove here in a little bit of a one-on-one. As that will be Obsidian getting the lead. They ended up using their Amp Matrix here in the last fight, but
I mean, you can't
also there's not... Yeah, there's not a great opportunity, you know, when you're pushing into the opposing team's high ground to use the Matrix, but Jazza with a long-range shot there on the Dove.
Right, there it is. I mean, that's the win condition of these setups. You know, either your hit scan finds a pick or your Sombra gets in and gets an assassination. Jazza and Glacial giving us both, and that's what puts Nardwin back in a commanding position. Obsidian didn't want to spend beat in that fight. They weren't really fighting. But they're eventually going to want to make use of it as Mayhem is building yet another one soon. You don't want to get lapped. That's a horrible old economy for you. You want to use the beat early and often and turn it into fight wins.
Yeah, this is good though for Nidewin. They push on forward. They see two players out. Jazza falls early at the hands of AJMR, but it's still far enough for them to get now a pretty substantial lead, right? Above 10 meters in terms of a lead. Obsidian still holding on to this sound barrier. I wonder if they must think that Glacial had the EMP like a fight or two ago.
Yes, I also think they're investing heavily in order to try and get this checkpoint. I think they don't want to sort of leak ultimates like we saw Nidewin do on occasion and have to rely on getting picks and winning fights in like less likely manners. So Might just be investment here. Dynasty hack, Dove, they're going to send the Bob in. That's one they're happy to part with for the time being. Big Bad and Bustling off to business. It's going to be Glacial brought down after the EMP, and the sound barrier is a great response. Now we're starting to get some of these key abilities drawn out of Obsidian, and they're making use of them here. It's headed for the hills. Nide win, everybody in full-scale retreat, and this means Dove can set up and be oppressive in this high ground position. This will give you the space to at least even up a score. There's a possibility for that checkpoint too, as again, a gravitic flux here would be absolutely diabolical for Nidewin to have to face. They've got one of their own here. Who lets it go first? Flux only catches Tread, AJR, MR, in the Immortality Field, and that's going to keep Tread alive when they come to the ground. There's the lead. There's the checkpoint for Obsidian.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, right, it's a really nice hand matrix. They push up, they use it as a group. They get the checkpoint. Now just getting it around the corner here. You're going to have Blade. And you're going to have this Flux with nothing on the other side. This is going to be the Flux. Tread just trying to dodge that accretion.
Sound barrier used really for Nidewin just to stay in this thing, and they still lose Mayhem to the dynamite explosion. Tread does see a player behind him, and unperturbed for now. Kinetic Grass, this will buy a lot of time as that bot is still advancing here. It's like a 45-meter push for a timeless Obsidian, and they'll be happy, more than happy with that result.
Yeah. And Nidewin is actually kind of fortunate, Mitch. They get Dynasty early in that fight, which they can use that sound barrier now to kind of combo, go against that Gravitic Flux on the other side. But if Dynasty would have lived and they use that beat and then the Gravitic Flux, you would have had a free Blade there for Dynasty going up against Nidewin, which at that point the car probably would have pushed even closer to the end of the map.
Blade here for Dynasty still. No opportunity to use it. 2 picks from Jazza. And there's more now as Nidewin come crashing in like an avalanche. What do Obsidian have to actually slow this down? Like a Blade, you throw that in, there isn't an Immortality Fill for Nidewin. You have to bank on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. And now with what, Tracer, Cassidy, you can put a little bit more pressure on Dub. You just need to find this like medium range that you're going to fight in. Is Dynasty just in a really odd spot.
They already used Suzu. This is the opportunity. Dynasty doesn't even have to draw the steal to find these two. They knew he was there. They were aware that the Genji was in a flanking position. The Dynasty still drags them down as he comes back over. The rest of Obsidian doing a great job forcing those defensive cooldowns before the fight happened.
Yeah, it looks like the hinder misses. It's a big deflect there from Dynasty, gets some big damage down with it, and then doesn't even need to use the Blade right there. It's just dashes and cleaning up. The rest of Nidewin, and this is where push becomes pretty difficult to have Garchomp gonna I don't think you connect with anything there, right?
Nothing, not a damn thing. Nobody from Thailand's Obsidian caught inside that Gravitic Flux. That Sigma ultimate completely wasted, and all it did really was signal the go for Obsidian to run into the rest of them and take a bit of a brawl. Blade used there by Dynasty. It didn't headline the fight. Didn't have to. Just taken down potentially by a mag grenade. Unclear.
I think he kind of I think he turns the corner there, Garchomp, to end up trying to dodge the accretion coming from Tread, and then ends up not getting anybody. AJ Mar uses this AM Matrix up front yet again. This is how they got an advantage in the previous fight.
This is a huge part of the Sigma mirror, right?
I mean,
hitting that accretion while your opponent is going for a flux. Garchomp was full health there, but AM Matrix and AJMR completing the kill.
Yeah. I was gonna say, lifts up Garchomp with the Gravitic Flux, and then into line of sight of players just shooting through that AM Matrix at that Sigma up in the sky. Nothing you can really do there.
Might be a quick series this one, Matt. Jasso. Deadeye a little bit hard to guarantee here with Sigma Shield, so you push past it instead. Try and get Obsidian to scatter. Get rid of the Immortality Field. They've done the right things here. Remove some of these defensive cooldowns. And they haven't spent too heavily either. Pulse Bomb there for Glacial to secure the kill on Dub. That's fine. They keep it beat. They keep it Deadeye. But there's 49 seconds left to play.
Yeah, I think you're just trying to contest, just burn clock there if you're Obsidian, which they do is... and now will be not to win. You got to win about what, 3-4 fights in a row here.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's going to be quite brutal to do.
Still the Genji for Dynasty building close to yet another Blade. Can Deadeye from Jazza catch anyone out here? AJMR down. Okay, sound barriers available for momentum, but Obsidian will probably just give this up.
The Bob buys so much space. I mean, oh, look at this. You're going to have to use Sound Barrier and the Deadeye here just to feel comfortable.
I mean, that's devastating. Obsidian don't use any ultimates here. the Bob used earlier on. They hold on a blade, they hold on a beat, and they might as well get away with this. Oh, unreal! Gravitic Flux gonna catch Paradox. The Garchomp can't do anything. Held aloft as he is stewed by shot after shot. And Timeless Obsidian win this elimination match. They stay alive in Group C.
Yeah, I mean, they looked awesome, right? I mean, even kind of forced off of the Maga comps for a little bit there, where No I'd Win started to look a bit better. Obsidian comes through today, and they take care of business. I mean, that was as dominant of a showing I think we've seen.
It really was, and I love that we got to see a Mei again earlier in the EMEA region. We saw Kaiser on the Mei. That really was such a huge difference maker in those fights for making them come out on top. So on map number 1, Mei was the story here for Obsidian. Dynasty absolutely had the same effect for his team. And after that, I mean, it was a bit of a beatdown, so there's really only so much you can say about the maps.
Yeah, I mean, you know, typically, not typically, this weekend, with how things were going, you thought you would see a ton of Maga. We really only saw it on Lijiang Tower, right? They played like some Sigma, Ramatra, different types of things for both of these teams. But man, when you saw that Maga mirror, you could tell Obsidian like had that locked down.
Yeah, I think that you know, the Ramatra Sigma matchup was quite compelling through King's Row here. The Maga setups, I don't think Mei is good universally in these Maga comps. I think we saw that a little bit. Glacial struggled on this map because, again, you've got ways to get around Mei. When you can really force people to play in chokes and when you can deny synergies and combos with that ability, it's great. Well, honestly, a lot of versatility here. I think Dynasty's showing us a ton of different picks. The Genji here looks really good. In fairness, they're doing a great job of focusing backliners down. I think HMR did, you know, able to sort of cold in that fight to also assist. The Cassidy found some value too, right? That hindrance, the mag grenade is really important. And there are some setups, there are some comps in which it's a difference maker, right? You're dealing with Doom, you're dealing with Sombra, you're dealing with Tracer, you're dealing anything with like Genji. Cassidy, very, very powerful still, but his usefulness outside of that, his utility is still narrow. It's still rough, and on a map like Colosseo, it's not an option. You're going to play with a longer range hit scan. This fight is huge. Dynasty, the deflect, the map pointed out is massive, but they hear the Suzu go off. That's their window to go in and pressure, and didn't even have to blade in order to absolutely wreck them. It's great to see that Genji has applications here too.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see like when Obsidian goes up in their next match, right?
Yeah,
like,
maybe, right?
Or or some of the top teams, like top teams versus each other, like what it looks like in terms of the meta, because we saw a lot of deviation from Maga there. I wonder if there are teams that have then kind of cooked up something that maybe stops that Maga, or at least gets teams to switch off of it, gives them enough trouble to. And then the meta is kind of all up in the air if that's the case. Yeah.
I mean, I love that though. I do like that, or I think it goes to show that none of the teams are that comfortable on that Maga comp yet. Therefore, they are more likely to make those switches and just revert back to something that they just feel a little bit more practiced on. Because again, like for the people just tuning in, this is a very recent patch. None of those teams had a lot of time to scrim and really see what the limitations of that composition are, how to play it, and how to play against it.
Hey, you know who's still pretty good though? Lucio.
Yeah, Lucio.
Lucio. Hey,
Lucio pretty good. I think that also, like we were talking about this at the start of the series, safest doesn't necessarily mean best. Right?
Yes.
Like it is consistent and it is straightforward, but it's also not easy to play. We talked a lot, Zoe, as well, about how the neutral fight is becoming, a concept we want to revisit and talk about a lot more. Because in Amalgam Mirrors, right, it comes down to not ultimate spark abilities and those small differences in composition. Is there a Sombra? Is there a Mei? Is there a Reaper? Is there a Sojourn, Cassidy, whatever it might be? So even that, it's no guarantee. And some teams just might not have that level of comfort yet. Also, there are windows in between these defensive cooldowns. You exploit them with heroes like Genji, who can be flexible and can get started real quick if he has to.
I think look, I think everything's kind of like up for grabs in terms of the meta. I think like obviously Maga seems to be very strong. I think like Lucio enables like so much of these things to happen because
a real comp.
Because characters who shouldn't have mobility then get comboed with Lucio, and now everybody has mobility, right?
Darn that enabler,
shouldn't have healing. Have healing. For characters that have passive healing, it stacks.
Group speed is so massive. I mean, it was the same type of thing during GOATs, right? Like, if you kind of took Lucio away from that and made those comps immobile, you could, in theory, you know, when people, you know, would scream on Twitter about, like, hey, play Pharah. And
would lose to
so we were all pointing our fingers in the wrong direction.
Yeah, yes.
It's not Maga's fault. It's really Lucio, the enabler, who's the
Lucio
root of
the
all
enabler.
evil. Yeah, all evil.
That's his new nickname.
Lucio the enabler, the root of all evil. Is wearing skates. Who would have thought? Man. No, but I do like that. I also just love to still see teams having different identities, you know. I think we already saw that also in the EU region earlier today, or rather EMEA region, excuse me. I don't like having metas where everyone, like back in GOATs, like you had to play GOATs or bust. Like that was just the
No one
only
likes
real
it.
option.
We were just paid to like it. We were paid to like it.
Literally, actually, that's
We just
what
pretended.
happened, but
Look how excited we were
don't think-
when Nori banned May when we did hero pools. Like, you could see it.
he did so well. Yeah, no, but like, I love the meta we had prior to this patch. I love that it was wide open. And I hope that the players will just continue in that trend and still find their own identity and not necessarily buy into, well, this has a huge buff now, so therefore we have to run with it. I don't, as you said, that's not necessarily a recipe for success.
Yeah, I think the patch hit so, you know, Tuesday, right? And then you're kind of like, oh, we have a match this weekend. What's the thing we can play this weekend? And the easiest thing you can find is Cardiac Overdrive, Reaper, Lucio, go forward. Where I think as more people play in ranked, as you know, different types of you know, scrims happen and whatnot, you know, I think the regions get to watch each other a little bit, right? Like not a lot of sim so far today. I think you'll see things kind of change a little bit.
Everyone can still copy each other's homework. Now let's chat to the winner. We have an audio-only interview with Dynasty, who also made player of the match. First of all, of course, congratulations to you and the squad. How are you doing?
Thank you. We're doing good. That was a good match, I would say. Very fast tempo. I liked it.
Yeah, dominant. I would do good after such a performance as well. Now, of course, new team, new format, new meta now as well. Do you feel like your team has found their stride yet?
In terms of this new patch, I would say so. I feel like the Maga meta is it's very solidified. It's like you just play Maga, Moira, Lucio, and like you can like just like alternate between DPS, and I think that's something me and Dove can do very well. I can probably play literally anything.
We did see in the series, though, you guys go away from the Maga a little bit. Is that like something that you think is maybe just like on King's Row? Is that, you know, what kind of like reads do you see that would force somebody off of Maga at the moment?
Well, we saw on King's Row that they were starting to play Sigma comp on that map because they were losing the Maga mirror. So we figured that on Colosseo, historically, Sigma is good because of how like the open lane works. We thought that like if we mirrored, we would just like beat them in that because we have better players at the core. So that's the concept. It's like we'll just mirror and beat them.
You have a chance to get out of this group and make the main event still, right? Obviously, tough matchup against the sister team. You have M80 on the docket, who obviously had a very close game against Timeless. Different meta. I mean, yeah, things looking a little bit different now, feeling a little bit different. You guys feel like you're able to show us a little bit more of what you're capable of in that matchup to get out of the group?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think we can definitely beat M80. Like, I'm not even worried. If we lose, we lose, but
Not
it is what
even
it is.
worried.
Because like they have really good players, but like
Yeah.
some of them are on ping, and I'm very confident in my team's ability. Like,
That's awesome. That's the confidence you need. That's how you should rock up to every single match you're playing, and that's the kind of Genji I personally need on my team as well. So, Dynasty, thank you so much for joining us for a quick chat. Best of luck to you and the squad in your next match against M80.
no problem. Thank you guys for having me. Have a good day.
You too. Always a blast to hear it from our players. Yeah, I mean, they were so dominant. I don't really think the opposition pushed them very far out of their comfort zone. I'm sure it's going to be a different story going up against N80. Yeah. That is going to come up very soon, and we'll see who's going to make it out of the group. For now, we're going to head into a quick break. After that, we're going to see Beluga's platoon going up against Pirates in Pajamas. There, I got there in the end.
My God.
It is. There's always a Pirates and a Pajamas team somewhere in every open
Now they're
format.
the same team.
Now they're the same team. It is what it is. That's Group D elimination coming up next, right after this.